Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I thought it would be really fun to go through my YouTube comments section, grab some really good questions and give a really thorough answer in a video. So today I've selected 10 different comments from different YouTube videos that I've made. We're mainly focused on mold, gut issues and histamine. So if any of these are something you've got going on, there's some really good questions here. When I say they're good questions, I mean the questions that the person's asking, they're actually really good questions. They're thinking about the problem in the right way, or they're asking really good questions that have a big impact on how we approach whatever we've got going on. So these are literally your questions that you have left in the comment section of previous videos. So if you want to get featured in a video like this, make sure that you leave me your questions in the bottom of this video, in any of the other videos that I've made. So let's start with the first one. This is a question from Georgie H6373, and she asks, it's my understanding that taking probiotics doesn't colonize the gut, so would we have to continue to take them forever? This is such a good question. I love this question. So this is a really interesting debate. There are some people that think that colonizing, like probiotics like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, can colonize the body. So these microbes come into the gut and then they start to live inside the gut. And there's another group of people that disagree with this, and they think that these microbes that we take in probiotics and in fermented foods, they cannot colonize the gut. So they don't live inside the gut. They come in, they work in a transitory fashion, and then they leave in the stool. So there's actually no science as to which one of these is right. So it's just theory, it's just speculation. There is no science either way. But what we do know is that when we do take probiotics, we can shift the composition of the microbiome. So whether this is because we take these probiotics and they come to live inside of us, or if it's because we take these probiotics and whilst we're taking them, they are having an impact on the microbiome, the presentation of our microbiome currently. So they start to kill some dysbiotic microbes, they remove some pathogens, they support motility and they support digestive functions. And in doing this, this creates a better environment in the gut for our beneficial microbes to begin to thrive. So it's almost like, in a way, you could think of it like a crutch. We're using the probiotic to temporarily do the microbiome's job for it, which helps it to get strong enough that it can start to do its job by itself again. So either way, whether the probiotics can actually colonize in the gut or not, it actually doesn't matter, which is great because it means that we can just use probiotics and whichever way it's working, it's working. And that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter how it works. All that matters is that it works. So really great question there. Next, we have a question from Shah7508. And she asks, is it safe to take Betaine HCL if you don't need it and your body is already making enough, but you are not aware of it? So like, is it okay to try if you don't know what your HCL levels are? This, again, really good question. I can share a little personal story here. So I actually took Betaine HCL. I didn't feel anything from taking it. And from what I read online, they said you just keep taking a slightly higher and higher dose until you start to feel a small burning in your stomach. I ended up taking 11 capsules of Betaine HCL, and I actually think I wouldn't say I've permanently damaged my stomach, but I triggered gastritis, and this is still an issue that I have to this day. This is self-inflicted. This is from me taking Betaine HCL. So I actually did this to myself. And when I say I've made all of these mistakes, so you don't have to, this is exactly what I mean. So I do think that taking Betaine HCL, even if you have enough acid, is generally safe up to 1, maybe 2 capsules. I wouldn't recommend going more than that without the guidance of a practitioner, or if you have like a confirmed test. There's this like test that you can do where you like swallow a pill on a string. It's a bit uncomfortable, but it measures the acid levels inside your stomach, and then you kind of like burp and they pull it out. So this is called a pH study. You can test the acidity levels of the stomach. Even if you did this, I don't know if it would conclusively be an accurate reading of your stomach acid levels, because your acid levels fluctuate all of the time. If you go without food for a while, they're going to change. If you eat, they're going to change. The goal is that we want to have strong acid levels when we've eaten a meal. And I don't know if that test is actually going to be a reliable measure of. What I would say is, if you take 1 or 2 capsules with a meal and you don't notice anything negative, it's very unlikely that it's going to do you any harm. Very unlikely. If you do start to notice over time that doing that, you're getting some sort of like burning or warmth, then you probably don't need it. I would say that people that have strong stomach acid, when they take even 1 capsule, they feel it immediately and they feel they definitely don't need it. So if you're in that more ambiguous place where you take it and you don't really feel better, but you don't really feel worse, there's a good chance that you might benefit from taking 1 or 2. The next question that we have is from Bucci Cat. and they say, I really need help right now. I left my moldy environment 3 days ago after a year of living in mold. Just 3 days after leaving, I feel like I'm feeling with jitteriness, paranoia, shortness of breath, GI issues, constipation, short-term memory, heat waves. I'm scared. Is this normal? This is a really, really good question. I would say yes, to some extent, this is normal, especially if you've been exposed for an extended period of time. Like if you've been exposed to mold for longer than 3 months, it's almost guaranteed that you've overloaded your body's ability to detox, and the body's gone into sort of like a storage mode where what it can't process and eliminate, it's going to begin to store. And when you leave that moldy environment, your body is going to try to fully clear everything that's kind of in circulation, and you're in that first like couple of day window. Usually what I see happen is within the first week, people tend to be a little bit wobbly. This is where the body's just trying to get out, get rid of everything that's been actively in circulation. Then they have this like amazing period of like maybe 2 weeks where all of their symptoms just get better, like magically. It doesn't happen for everyone, but it happens for quite a few people where all their symptoms just get way better. The histamine issues are less, the digestive issues are less, and they're like, oh my God, it was because I was in a moldy building. Now I'm not in the moldy building, feel amazing. And then that only lasts for like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, everything goes to shit again. All of their symptoms come back. They start getting all these different issues and they think, no, it's something else. It isn't just the mold. Actually, what has happened here is your body goes through that wobbly phase where it's trying to get those circulating toxins out. Then it has stability for a little while. So you feel normal because you're not being poisoned from your environment anymore. And you start to feel okay. And then your body says, okay, we've been feeling good enough for a while. Let's get to work. And then it really kicks the detox in. And this is why you start to see those symptoms kind of turn back on. This is because your body has now started to access those toxins that have been stored in the fat tissue. And now it's starting to pull them out. And this is where it's really important to support detox and work on supporting the microbiome, because now your body is purging what it has stored the whole time that it was being exposed. It's really good if this happens, and we just want to make sure that we build a nice approach to help your body remove these compounds. If you need help with figuring that out, check out the 6 steps to detox mold video. We actually have 2 of them. Following those 6 steps is going to be the absolute best way that you can support your body in helping it escort these compounds that it has been storing for a long period of time out of the body with as minimal symptoms as possible. Next, we have a question from Dawn Waycaster 1701. She says, I absolutely love your videos, but I can't afford a consult. What did you do for mold colonization? Really nice question. So I actually didn't directly do anything for mold colonization, even though I do think that this is maybe a bit of an issue for me even still. Instead of trying to shift a mold colonization by taking like itraconazole or some kind of antifungals like allicin or something like that, the way I'm doing this is I think that the colonization is more a secondary problem that comes as a consequence of having so many mycotoxins in the body and them having an immunosuppressive effect. So when you have those mold toxins in the body, not only do they create dysfunction in all of the systems, they suppress immunity because they're creating histamine and mast cell problems and dysregulating the immune function, creating inflammation, doing all these things, but they also have an antibiotic effect. So they damage the beneficial microbe. They hurt this careful orchestration of microflora that we have. So if we can continue to support the detoxification and get to the point where these toxin levels get really low, we lose the immunosuppressive effect and we lose the antibiotic effect. So the immune system comes back on very strong and the microbiome really begins to reestablish itself. And as this happens, you will naturally clear a colonization. Your body will naturally push it out. Things I've found really helpful to support this process have been most especially, I would say, fasting. So doing 24 to 36-hour fasts. I generally wouldn't recommend doing longer than a 36-hour fast. I've found that most people, especially if you have like a colonization or you have a long history of exposure, you're going to have weak adrenal glands. Your nutrient levels are probably going to be low. Doing a long 3, 5, 7-day fast is not going to help. It's just going to stress your body out, dysregulate your nervous system, make it feel unsafe, and it's not going to put it in a healing state. Instead, if we do more frequent short-term fasts, like for example, I will often try to do a 36-hour fast every single week. I did one last week. I did one the week before that. I don't know if I'll do one next week. I've got a bit of a busy schedule, but I try to get these 36-hour fasts in. They have a very deep cleaning effect. You will kill mold colonization. Your body will basically kill the mold because it wants to steal its protein and its nutrients to use because you're in a fasted state. But you're also pushing that bile to move the mycotoxins. You're breaking down all the damaged mitochondria. You're healing the gut lining. It's really a very profound, like holistic healing modality. So instead of just killing the colonization directly, we're fixing the detox, we're fixing the other issues that are caused by that, like the microbiome imbalance, and we are actually directly attacking the colonization, but not with an antimicrobial, but with the body's natural cleansing mechanism. So that's what I'm doing, and that's generally how I'd recommend going about it. I really would encourage you to think about an antifungal or like intraconazole or herbs like allicin. I really want you to think about them as being as strong as taking antibiotics. And most people tend to try to avoid taking antibiotics because they know that it's going to set them back in their healing. The same is true for antifungals and antimicrobial herbs. They have the same function. So be very cautious when using them. We have a question here from Dwight Dowell. He says, I have a question about the probiotics. I have heard that many of them don't even get to where they need to go. Like they get killed off by the stomach and they don't make it to where they need to be for the actual work. What are your thoughts or experience with that? It's a good question. I actually don't think it really is a problem, especially if you take your probiotics first thing in the morning on an empty stomach away from food. If you do this, both valves in your stomach, so you've got one at the top here that opens. This is the lower esophageal sphincter. It's like just here. And then you've got one at the bottom of your stomach. This is the pyloric sphincter. If you do this first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, both of these sphincter valves are open. So the water and the probiotic fluid is literally going to flush straight through the stomach, and it's going to go into the small intestine straight away. So you're going to lose almost none. Even if you looked at something like a fermented food, which will trigger the valve to close, so like kefir or sauerkraut or kimchi or something, you will kill some of those microbes. But even when they're dead, they still work as a binder in the gut, and they still have a lot of impact on immunity and in other regulatory functions. There will still be many that are still alive, and those will still have their effect. So if you want to get the most sort of value for money, where we want to try and kill as little of those probiotics as possible, because obviously custom probiotics, they're kind of a bit expensive. I can understand that. So if you want to get your best value for money, take them first thing in the morning on an empty stomach with some water, and they will just flush straight through, and you'll lose 5% of them at max. Then here we have a question from Gurnet09. And she asks, what if we are not low in any of the 4 bacteria you listed, but still have SIBO and mold issues? So the 4 bacteria that she's talking about in this are the 4 core microbes that I see are most often low or missing on a stool test when somebody has gut issues. And these are Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, Akkermansia. So these 4, they're usually one or maybe more of them tend to be low when someone has a gut dysbiosis. And working on trying to rebuild them can be really, really helpful. But if you've done a stool test and these things all come back fine, my first suggestion would be to still try a Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium type probiotic, because a stool test is a bit biased towards the colonic flora. So if you think about what we're doing with a stool test, we're basically measuring the microbes that are in your poo right after you poo. And the thing is, your colonic flora is going to be more represented in the stool test. And what we really want to see, what's going on in your microbiome, is happening in the small intestine. That's where autoimmunity starts. That's where histamine intolerance starts. That's where SIBO is based, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So it's more about what's going on in the small intestine than the colon. So it's possible that you have good numbers of these beneficial microbes, but it's more biased towards the colon, and you actually have an imbalance or a deficiency or a dysbiosis in the small intestine, and you won't really pick that up on a stool test. So I would recommend experimenting with trying some probiotics. If you take, let's say like a small dose, like 50 billion CFUs of a Lactobacillus bifidobacterium probiotic, and you have a strong reaction, that tells me that you have a dysbiosis in your small intestine. Because if your stool test came back and all the levels look normal, you should be able to take like 1 trillion CFUs of a probiotic and not have a problem. You shouldn't really feel anything if you don't have a true dysbiosis. And this is what people used to do. When they needed to preserve food, they would make kefir, they would make yogurt, fermented foods, and they would eat trillions of CFUs of microbes, and they would feel good. They just eat these probiotics and they feel good. They have energy, they feel strong and energized. And that's very often not what happens nowadays when people take probiotics. Usually they get digestive issues, histamine intolerance, they get a stomach ache, they feel uncomfortable, they get bloated or constipated, or they have diarrhea. And this is because they actually do have a dysbiosis. Even if this is like a subclinical dysbiosis, where maybe on a regular day, they don't have any digestive problems, they don't have any food intolerances, but you give them a lot of fermented foods, which are these beneficial microbes, and it highlights the imbalance that they have, even if it's like a subclinical level where they're asymptomatic. So to answer that concisely, try a probiotic anyway, probably a Lactobacillus bifidobacterium probiotic. See how you get on with it. If you're having SIBO and mold issues, I can almost guarantee you're going to have some kind of reaction, and you have to build your dose up gradually according to your tolerance. Next question from Kelly109. She asks, what to do if we're one of the super sensitive ones that don't tolerate Saccharomyces boulardii? She's had nearly a lifetime of living in mold. So to answer the question really quickly, if you don't tolerate it, don't use it, use something else. I would recommend starting with the delactate-free probiotic that I just mentioned in the previous answer. It's my favorite probiotic. It's the most gentle. If it still don't tolerate it, pick one of the strains that are in that delactate-free probiotic and try starting with just one of them. My favorites would be Bifidobacterium longum and Bifidobacterium infantis. These are really good ones to start with. But as a more general answer to this question, there are like a million things that you can't do. Either they're out of budget or you don't tolerate them, but healing doesn't require you to do any of those things. The thing that you need to do to heal is within reach right now. There's something that you can do, and that's what you need to do. That's where you need to focus. It's so easy to get distracted and to feel hopeless in all of the things that we can't do, all of the things that we don't tolerate, all of the things that aren't working for us. And that's not where any of your healing is actually going to happen. Instead, we need to shift focus and look at what you can do. What are you able to do right now? What can you afford? What can you tolerate? And focus on doing that. There are so many things that you can do that are available, but you don't do them because you don't think they're going to make a big enough difference, because there's all these other things. Like for a long time, I would want to like boost my antioxidant levels, and I wanted to do these like MCAS cocktails that were like 200 pounds per cocktail. So I wouldn't do simple things. And I realized I can get almost all of those nutrients just from juicing, and I can juice and I can do it at home and I can tolerate it. So I did that, and it takes effort and it's really a pain in the ass to clean the juicer, but it worked. It worked really, really well for me. And I think it gave me all of the benefits that I could have got from doing those IVs. I later went on to be able to do the IVs, and it was interesting that I did feel some difference, but it didn't really make as much difference as the juicing. So the thing I actually had right in front of me that felt like the small fish thing to do that wouldn't make much of a big difference actually ended up making more of a big difference than the thing that in my head I'd imagined would make the most difference, but wasn't available to me for some reason. So focus on doing what you can do. There is something that's right in front of you. That's what you actually need to do for healing. It's not this big, extravagant, expensive, or unavailable thing that you can't do. Maybe that will happen one day, but if it feels too big for you right now, then it's not the right thing. Focus on the little thing that's right in front of you. The next question is from 127 Spud, which is a great name. I love that. They say, "Hi William, I love your content. So informative and easy to understand." I'm really glad that you've been enjoying. They ask, "Do you have an Akkermansia probiotic that you could recommend that would be histamine safe? It came back low on my GI map." So Akkermansia is a bit of a tricky one because there are some Akkermansia products now. I don't know how good they are. They're quite new. I don't know if they're a very effective way of boosting Akkermansia in the gut. Instead, what I would recommend is, first of all, if you can tolerate any red polyphenols, this is a really, really good way to go. Generally speaking, any polyphenols are good. So it's not just about having more polyphenols, it's about having more different types of polyphenols. So think about the aroma of coffee, or the smell of chocolate, or onions and garlic. These different foods that have very pungent, very distinct flavors. These are polyphenols that cause these different smells and flavors and tastes. So don't focus on all the things that you can't do. Like I mentioned chocolate and coffee, and maybe if you have histamine issues, those foods are off the table. So don't use those foods. Use foods that you can tolerate and try to get as much diversity as you can. Akkermansia does really well with reds. So if you can do pomegranate or cranberry, these are two really, really good options. I don't know how histamine safe these are though. I think cranberry might be a no. I think pomegranate might be okay. I don't know. Double check it. I'm not sure off the top of my head. There's also another red one that's really good, but it's escaping my mind right now. So any reds are good, but any polyphenols in general are really, really nice. Another thing that can be really helpful, and this might not be for everyone, but I kind of mentioned this a minute ago, fasting can be really helpful for Akkermansia. So if you break the word or the name of Akkermansia down, you have Akkermansia mucinophilia. So this mucinophilia, if you break it down, it's mucinophilia. So this is mucin loving. It means it loves mucin, loves mucus. So the primary food source of Akkermansia is actually your gut lining, the mucus that you produce in your gut lining. So one of the best ways that we can actually boost Akkermansia is to go for some period of time without food. So if we do some short-term prolonged fasting or some intermittent fasting, I'd say really you need to do like 18 hours intermittent fasting to really see this benefit. This gives your Akkermansia some time, some opportunity to eat the mucus that you're producing in your gut, and it can have an Akkermansia boosting effect. So if you combine red polyphenols and other polyphenol diversity with some fasting, if that's right for you, that's a really nice way to boost Akkermansia levels. Got two more. One here from Porsche Tuning 3654 asks, I have MCAS. Would a GI map test benefit me? Really good question, really quick answer. Probably it's the best test that you could do. The only other test that might provide you with more insight might be an organic acids test, or if you were to do something like a total tox test by Vibrant. This is a test that measures mycotoxins, heavy metals, lots of different toxic chemicals. The reason this could be really helpful for MCAS is most people that are dealing with mast cell activation syndrome have some kind of environmental toxicity. It's very, very common. So a GI map gut test could be really good because sometimes that environmental toxin is something that's being produced from our gut bacteria. So that could be one really good option. Another would be to test for different toxins. And the one that gives you the broadest array of toxins that I'm aware of is the Total Tox by Vibrant. This will test you not only for mycotoxins, but heavy metals and some other chemicals as well. But yes, gut test would be a very good idea. And final question for today from Kerry Wind 9173 asks, thanks so much for this. I feel hopeful as someone who has reflux and gallbladder pain from histamine. I react to DAO and so many things as soon as it hits my stomach. I can take a tiny grain of those probiotics, but maybe I should do the probiotic as a suppository instead. Could you also do DAO that way? So there's two questions basically. If you are very sensitive to things, generally start on smaller doses. That's a generally very good rule to follow. Most people do actually tolerate more than they think, but the dose that they tolerate it is much smaller than they think. And it can be very humbling to have to open a capsule and sprinkle a teeny tiny bit out. And it feels like it's pointless and it feels like you're not making any progress, but really that is where healing is for some people. So if you do need to make that dose smaller, absolutely do that. Probiotics are something that you can benefit from rectally. I have done probiotic suppositories before. I've used them with many of my clients. They are very effective. They tend to help people with different problems than for the issues that are helped by taking them orally. For me, taking them orally helped more with histamine issues, with anxiety, and with my mood generally. But doing them as a suppository, for me, tend to help more with my energy and with my sleep, which was really, really interesting. Usually, you can tolerate a higher dose administered rectally. This is because the colonic flora is usually many, many, many times more than the small intestine, the upper GI microbiome. This is because we have more bugs and more diversity of bugs lower down in the digestive tract, but still start really small. And just because you tolerate a high dose orally doesn't mean you'll tolerate a high dose rectally. I'd still start on a really, really tiny dose, but you might be able to build it up a little bit faster than you did with the probiotic dose that you took orally. And as for DAO, I don't think that would work very well rectally. The main place that we want DAO is in the small intestine. This is where we have the most of it, and this is where the majority of histamine is broken down. So this is why we want to take DAO orally. If you don't tolerate it orally, you could try a different type of DAO. So there are usually two types, one that comes from vegetables like pea sprouts, and the other that usually comes from kidney extract, usually from pigs. If you don't tolerate one, you can try the other. If you don't tolerate either of them, you could even try growing your own pea sprouts at home. Sometimes the enzymes are very harsh and people don't tolerate them, but when you have them in a whole food format, they are received better by the body. So you could try something like growing your own pea shoots, pea sprouts at home, and maybe that would give you the benefit. But I don't think doing DAO rectally would have much of a benefit. So I hope that answers your question, Nat. So that's all 10 questions. If you found this really interesting, please do let me know. I'm only going to do another video like this if you really liked it. So if you watched all the way to the end, let me know that you really, really liked it. Leave me a bunch of question marks, you know, the with a dot. Leave me a bunch of question marks as a comment to know that you love these Q&A session. And if you have a question that you'd love for me to answer in one of these Q&A sessions, make sure you leave me that as a comment below and maybe I'll pick you. So that's all. I hope you found it really interesting and helpful, and I hope all of your questions have been answered. Take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.